Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Karen Buckley. Karen Buckley, a 24-year-old student, went missing after a night out with friends at a nightclub on April 11th. Born in 1991 in Cork, Ireland, Karen was the youngest child and only daughter of John and Marion Buckley. Growing up, Karen was known for her kind and caring nature, always willing to lend a helping hand. This trait greatly influenced her career choices. After graduating from St. Mary's Secondary School in Mallow, Karen pursued a degree in nursing at the University of Limerick. Her interest in occupational therapy eventually led her to Glasgow, where she enrolled in a master's program at Caledonian University. Karen arrived in Glasgow in January 2015 and moved into an apartment with 3 other female students who were also new to the area. On April 11, 2015, Karen and her flatmates went to a nightclub about 2 kilometers from their apartment. They arrived around 11:45 p.m. and had a great time. At about 1 a.m., Karen told her friend she was going to the restroom and would return soon. She took her purse and left her jacket on the table where the group was sitting. Her friends continued to enjoy themselves while Karen was away. After a while, they realized Karen had been gone longer than expected and should have returned by then. However, Karen was nowhere to be found. One of her friends searched the club for her but couldn't locate her. Trying to contact her by phone was also unsuccessful. She came with thought maybe Karen had gone home, but it was strange that Karen didn't tell anyone and left her jacket behind. The only explanation they could think of was that Karen might have met someone at the club and left with that person. With this thought in mind, they went to bed. However, when they woke up around noon, Karen's neighbors were surprised to find that she had not returned home. They called and messaged Karen on social media, but she didn't respond. Although they had only known Karen for a few months, they knew that this behavior was out of character for her. Instead of coming up with alternative explanations to reassure themselves, they decided to report her disappearance to the police and inform the Buckley family about what had happened. The Scottish police acted swiftly to find Karen, and her disappearance was publicized in the media. Her parents urged anyone with information to come forward. Meanwhile, detectives reviewed footage from the club's cameras and found evidence of Karen interacting with a mystery man. Within 36 hours, on April 13th, the man was identified as 21-year-old Alexander Pacto and was brought in for questioning. He confirmed that he had met Karen at the club and they had gone to his apartment on Dorchester Avenue, about 3 kilometers away. Alexander also revealed that they had been intimate. Around 4 a.m., Karen decided to leave Alexander's apartment and head home, despite his invitation to stay until morning. Alexander mentioned that during their intimate encounter, Karen accidentally hit her head on the bed corner, resulting in an injury and leaving blood marks on the sheets. The police reacted ambivalently to this information. While Alexander seemed genuinely open, he also appeared to be anticipating and justifying potential evidence that might be discovered in his apartment. On April 13th, a man reported finding a woman's purse to the police. Upon further investigation, it was revealed that the purse was discovered in the park near Alexander's residence, and it belonged to Karen. The purse contained her phone and identification documents. This new evidence lent credibility to Alexander's account of events, suggesting that something might have happened to Karen after she left his apartment. The search for Karen persisted, with hundreds of police officers thoroughly searching parks, forests, bodies of water, and abandoned buildings for any potential clues that could aid in the investigation. At that point, Alexander Pacto was the primary suspect, being the last person to have seen Karen. However, investigators kept his identity confidential and did not disclose any information about him. 2 days after Karen went missing, police entering Alexander's apartment with a search warrant, police were immediately struck by the strong smell of bleach. They also observed that the mattress on the bed was the wrong size. Small, dark red spots were discovered on the bed and in the bathroom, and samples were taken for analysis. Additionally, a toolbox and a large quantity of cleaning supplies were found in the apartment. A police dog trained to detect human remains indicated a potential find near Alexander Pacto's car. While awaiting a search warrant, detectives discovered that Alexander had taken his car to be cleaned the previous day, but the job appeared to have been done poorly. Upon searching the vehicle, investigators found small, dark red spots on the inside of the passenger door and sent samples to the lab for analysis. As the investigation progressed, suspicions mounted that Karen might not be alive, but the search for her continued unabated. After journalists uncovered the suspect's identity, a photo of Alexander Pacto appeared on the front page of a local newspaper the following day. This unexpected move by the press ultimately proved helpful to the investigation. A man recognized Alexander's photo in the newspaper and contacted the police, offering valuable information. He claimed to have worked with Alexander in the past and revealed that Alexander rented a warehouse on a farm outside Glasgow. This farm was approximately 9 kilometers from Alexander's apartment. The police pursued every lead and investigated this new information. The farm owner verified that Alexander indeed rented a storage space from him for £10 a week. Upon inspection of the storage space, the police discovered a 200-liter drum containing Karen's body, which had been dissolved in caustic soda, a highly corrosive alkaline substance capable of breaking down organic materials. They also found a bonfire with remnants of a mattress that Pacto had attempted to burn. On the same day, April 15th, the suspect in Karen Buckley's case was arrested. Faced with substantial evidence, Alexander admitted to taking Karen's life, but claimed it was in self-defense. Police reconstructed a timeline of events based on evidence and Alexander's testimony. On the night of April 11th to 12th, Karen left the club around 1 a.m. The reason for her departure remains unclear. Her friends reported no argument, stating Karen said she was going to the bathroom and would return. It is also unclear why Karen left her jacket behind, even if she had decided to go home. Officers investigating the case reviewed 1,900 hours of surveillance footage. One recording showed Karen encountering Alexander after leaving a club. They walked together towards his car, where it's believed he offered to drive her home. However, once inside the car, Alexander attacked Karen. He struck her 14 times on the head with a large wrench, resulting in her death. Investigators found dark red stains in the car, bathroom, and on Alexander's bed, later confirmed as Karen's dried blood. After disposing of her body, Alexander planned his next moves, starting with getting rid of Karen's purse, which was later recovered and given to the police. Around 2 a.m., he returned home and did something that shocked the detectives. He took the Karen out of the car and carried it into his apartment. Later, at 8 a.m., he used his phone to search online for information about caustic soda. He then visited a shopping center, where he purchased 6 liters of caustic soda, a respirator mask, and gloves at 9:42 a.m. To get rid of Karen's body, Alexander realized 6 liters of caustic soda wouldn't be enough. He bought more from another store on his way home and put the body in the bathtub. However, since his neighbor would return home around 8 p.m. and he wouldn't have enough time, he wrapped the body in a blanket and hid it in his bedroom. The next day, April 13th, Alexander threw a wrench into the River Clyde, later found by divers. He then visited a nearby shopping center, about 1.5 miles away, where he sought a consultant's advice on a product that could remove bloodstains from a mattress. He also purchased 2 padlocks that day. He took Karen's belongings to a farm and burned them. Then, he bought a barrel and took it to a rented warehouse. There, he poured in caustic soda and locked the gate with 2 new padlocks. Later that day, at 6 p.m., police visited his home and took him in for questioning. Alexander confessed to his crime, but his motive was unclear. He claimed he killed Karen in self-defense during a car argument, but investigators did not believe him. They thought he was trying to justify his actions. Police suspected that Alexander killed Karen to cover up another crime and then got rid of her body. However, the body was too decomposed to determine if Karen had suffered violence before dying. In September 2015, Alexander Pacto was found guilty and given a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 23 years. Through his lawyer, he apologized to Karen's family and expressed remorse. Alexander told his lawyer that he was too drunk on the night of the incident to remember why he killed Karen. If he had not pleaded guilty, he would have been eligible for parole in 25 years instead of 23. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Grant Hendrickson and Michelle Cartagena. Grant Hendrickson, born on September 20, 1972, in Macon, Georgia, was an outdoor enthusiast who enjoyed fishing, golf, canoeing, and camping. Like his girlfriend, he was also an active volunteer in the community, having worked at the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Macon since the age of 15. Their active lifestyles likely drew them together, according to those who knew them. Grant's girlfriend, Michelle Cartagena, was born on May 2, 1975, in Monterey, California. She was a well-rounded and talented individual. She played in her school's marching orchestra band, was the top singles tennis player, and led her school softball team. Additionally, she was a member of the National Honor Society. Outside of school, Michelle volunteered with the Red Cross and an animal welfare association, and she often visited elderly people. Her father remembered her as a caring and driven individual who aimed to pursue a career in medicine to help others and give back to society. January 3, 1995, brought a grim discovery to the typically quiet area of Juliet Lake. A passerby reported finding two lifeless bodies while walking near the lake. The local sheriff and his deputy responded to the scene, where they were met with a shocking sight. Their office was not accustomed to handling serious crimes, as fights and thefts were the norm. The deputies were not prepared for what they found: a white Honda parked on the lake's shore, with the body of a man inside and her body lying on the ground nearby. The cause of death was evident, even to a non-expert: both victims had been shot. The car contained the victims' personal belongings, including identification, which revealed the identities of the victims. The male victim was 22-year-old Grant Hendrickson, who was found in the driver's seat. The second victim was 19-year-old Michelle Cartagena. The police were alerted to the incident, and officers from the Major Crimes Unit, along with forensic experts, arrived at the lake. The detectives' attention was immediately drawn to Michelle's body, which was partially exposed with her skirt pulled up, suggesting a possible motive for the crime. An examination of the car revealed bullet holes, leading detectives to believe that the perpetrator had opened fire on them while they were inside. Grant was hit by 3 bullets and had no chance of survival. Michelle was shot twice and likely remained conscious as the perpetrator pulled her from the car. The position of Michelle's body, with her legs spread apart, suggested that the perpetrator may have intended to take advantage of her vulnerable state, but did not do so. Forensic experts found a substance on the inside of her thighs, which was later identified as saliva containing chewing tobacco particles. The saliva samples were sent to the lab for further analysis. During the crime scene investigation, police discovered important evidence, including bullet casings of 2 different calibers, 13.223 caliber casings and 4 9mm casings. The presence of 2 types of ammunition suggests that there may have been 2 perpetrators, each using a different weapon. The families of Grant and Michelle were shocked and stunned when they learned about the tragedy. They struggled to comprehend who could have committed such a heinous act against their children. As only children, Grant and Michelle were extremely close to their parents. They had been dating for over a year and had already made plans for their future together, including their upcoming wedding. When detectives couldn't identify any enemies or suspects through family and friends, they began investigating further. They visited Mercer University in Macon, where Grant and Michelle were classmates, to gather more information and piece together the events surrounding the tragedy. The police investigation into the deaths of Michelle and Grant was ongoing, but they had not uncovered any significant leads. Both victims were well-liked and respected at the university, with no known conflicts or enemies. Initially, detectives considered the possibility that the killer might have been a man who had romantic feelings for Michelle and was rejected, but this theory was not substantiated and was eventually set aside. A visit to Mercer University did not yield any useful information for the police. However, by reconstructing the events of January 2nd, the detectives learned that Michelle and Grant had gone to a restaurant, followed by a movie. After the film, they headed to a holiday camp at Juliet Lake. The camp was open to the public 24/7 and featured a boat launch, parking area, small dock, and picnic tables. Since it was a free public space, there was no staff or security present on the night of the crime. Other people were in the area, but they did not report anything suspicious. Some individuals did hear loud noises, which they initially dismissed as firecrackers. A witness reported seeing a 1980s Honda CRX speeding out of the parking lot. Meanwhile, investigators found a DNA sample in saliva on Michelle's thigh. However, at the time, DNA technology was still in its early stages. The DNA Identification Act, which allowed the FBI to create a national DNA database, was not passed until 1994. As a result, there was no database to compare the DNA sample to, and it could only be matched by directly comparing it to the perpetrator's DNA. The investigation also included questioning staff at the restaurant and cinema that Grant and Michelle visited before their deaths, but nothing suspicious was found. The authorities considered the possibility that they might have been random victims or had a chance encounter with someone who became violent. The detectives found no evidence of any other motives, as they had good grades, no connections to shady individuals, and did not use illicit substances. The fact that the perpetrator left behind valuables, including money, suggests that the motive behind the crime was not financial gain, but rather something else. Forensic analysis revealed that the likely weapons used in the crime were an AR-15 rifle and a 9mm Ruger pistol. Despite questioning over 100 individuals and collecting DNA samples from several dozen potential suspects, the investigation had stalled. More than a year and a half after the crime, Agent Randy Upton of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over the case in the fall of 1996. Randy adopted a new approach, shifting his focus from identifying the perpetrator to locating the weapon used in the crime. He visited the largest gun store in Macon and requested a list of customers who had purchased an AR-15 rifle between 1985 and 1995. Investigator Randy started contacting individuals on the list of 108 potential suspects. He explained to them that cooperating by allowing their weapon to be inspected and providing a DNA sample would greatly aid the investigation. Most of the people Randy spoke with agreed to comply, which led to the experts conducting further tests. As a result, the list of suspects began to dwindle. On November 27, 1996, Randy contacted Andrew Allen Cook, a 22-year-old who was on the list. During their conversation, Randy informed Andrew of the purpose of the call and asked permission to examine his rifle. However, Andrew claimed he no longer owned the rifle, stating that he had sold it in April 1994, nearly a year before the victims, Grant and Michelle, died. Nonetheless, gun store records showed that this was not possible, as Andrew had actually purchased the rifle in August 1994. Agent Randy became suspicious when Andrew lied to him. When Randy asked Andrew for a DNA sample, Andrew claimed he needed to discuss it with his father, simultaneously an FBI agent, before complying. Instead, Andrew hung up. This evasive behavior made Randy think that Andrew might be the person he was searching for. Investigations revealed that 5 months after Grant and Michelle's murders in 1995, Andrew pawned his rifle at a local gun store. Additionally, in December 1993, someone had bought a Ruger pistol on Andrew's behalf because he was underage at the time. Andrews sold this pistol to a friend in July 1995, shortly after pawning his rifle. This sequence of events suggested that Andrew's decision to get rid of both his rifle and pistol within 6 months of the murders was unlikely to be a coincidence. As the police gathered more information about Andrew, they became increasingly confident that they were on the right track. Further investigation revealed that Andrew had not only disposed of his firearms but also his 1987 Honda CRX, which matched the description of a car seen near the crime scene. Agent Randy decided to visit the diaper factory where Andrew worked. Although Andrew was absent, Randy spoke with one of his co-workers. A colleague of Andrew's reported that they had recently discussed the worst things they had ever done, and Andrew claimed to have shot someone with a rifle. The colleague was skeptical but asked Andrew why he had done it, and Andrew replied that he wanted to see if he could get away with it. The colleague also mentioned that Andrew was a frequent user of chewing tobacco. Another friend testified that Andrew had told him in late November 1996 that he needed to leave town because things were getting hot. These coincidences caught the attention of Agent Randy, who began searching for Andrew Cook, who had not lived with his parents for several years. On December 4, 1996, Agent Randy met with Andrew's father, John, who was also an FBI agent with 29 years of experience. Agent Randy explained that he was investigating the crime at Juliet Lake and wanted to speak with Andrew, but couldn't find him. John was familiar with the case of Grant and Michelle from the news, but had not been involved in the investigation. He told Agent Randy that he didn't consider Andrew a suspect, but promised to find him and talk to him. Later that day, John was able to reach Andrew by phone. John Cook's world was turned upside down when his son, Andrew, revealed a shocking truth. A detective had been searching for Andrew in connection with a crime at Juliet Lake, and John had asked his son if he knew anything about it. Andrew's response was devastating. "Daddy, I'm not telling you. You're one of them, you're a cop." John's next question was laced with hope that his son would deny any involvement. "Were you the one who did the shooting?" he asked. After a brief pause, Andrew confirmed his worst fears, saying yes. Andrew explained that he had been fishing at Juliet Lake on the night of the incident. A couple had arrived, and he had gotten into an argument with the driver, Grant. According to Andrew, Grant had threatened him with a pistol, prompting Andrew to grab his rifle and commit an irreversible act. John urged his son to turn himself in to the authorities, but Andrew refused, saying he would rather disappear. John was stunned by his son's confession, but he maintained his professional composure. The next day, he visited the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and reported his son's confession. At the time, no one was aware that Andrew had been arrested earlier that morning in a nearby county for illegally hunting deer in Turkey. He had given a false name, but his true identity was quickly discovered by Agent Randy. Randy then traveled to Jones County to speak with Andrew. Unbeknownst to Randy, Andrew had already confessed everything to his father the day before. When Randy arrived at the Jones County Sheriff's Office, he introduced himself and asked Andrew if he would be willing to answer a few questions. Andrew responded, "It's been 2 years, and you still don't have any evidence. I used to own a Honda, a rifle, and a Ruger, but now you're just trying to frame me." Andrew told the sheriff that if they helped his father get a lawyer, he would reveal the entire truth. After being transferred to Monroe County, Andrew's father, John, was allowed a private conversation with him. When John hugged his son, both men broke down in tears. Andrew confessed to his father that he wasn't at the lake to fish on the night of the crime. Instead, he claimed to have arrived after the victims, Grant and Michelle, were already there. Andrew's story went that he had fired multiple shots from his rifle, then used his pistol to fire additional shots. He then pulled Michelle's body out of the car in an attempt to mislead the police. As an extra precaution, Andrew spat on Michelle to prevent the police from linking him to the crime through saliva analysis. Andrew was subsequently charged with the murders of Grant Hendrickson and Michelle Cartagena. The police gathered additional evidence to support his confession, including tracing the ownership of the rifle and pistol used in the crime. Forensic examination of the guns confirmed that they were indeed the ones used to kill Michelle and Grant. Andrew Cook's DNA was matched to the saliva found on Michelle's body, further implicating him in the crime. The trial took place in 1998, during which John Andrew's father, spoke and apologized to the families of the victims, Grant and Michelle. He acknowledged that his apologies would not bring them peace and expressed regret for not recognizing the evil that had consumed his son. Andrew Cook was found guilty on March 19, 1998, and was sentenced to death. He exhausted all his appeals, and the execution was scheduled for February 22, 2013. However, 3 days before the scheduled execution, Andrew's attorneys filed a clemency appeal, arguing that he was mentally unstable and required treatment. The State Board of Pardons and Paroles considered the appeal but ultimately voted against clemency. On February 22, 2013, Andrew Cook's family visited him in prison to bid their final farewell. Before his execution, he was granted the opportunity to choose his last meal, which consisted of a steak, baked potatoes, fried shrimp, lemon pie, and soda. As he lay strapped to a gurney in the death chamber, Andrew delivered his final words, expressing remorse for his actions. "I'm sorry," he said. "I won't ask you to forgive me, as I struggle to forgive myself." He then thanked his family for their unwavering support and apologized for the pain he had caused them, stating, "I'm sorry I took so much from you all." At 11:08 p.m., the lethal injection was administered. 14 minutes later, Andrew Cook, 38, was pronounced dead. Following the execution, Mary Hendrickson, the mother of one of the victims, expressed relief that justice had finally been served after 18 long years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ashley Wadsworth. Ashley Wadsworth was born on July 25, 2002, in Vernon Township, British Columbia, Canada. She was the daughter of Kenneth Wadsworth and Christy Jenden, and had an older sister named Haley. The Wadsworth family was large and close-knit, consisting of over 50 people, including cousins, uncles, and aunts of varying degrees of kinship, all living in the same community. Ashley was a cheerful, outgoing, and energetic girl who was popular and had many friends. She enjoyed outdoor activities such as swimming, horseback riding, and skiing. She was also passionate about tennis and played the clarinet. Ashley was very active on social media, frequently sharing memes, jokes, and photos. It was through social media that Ashley met Jack Seppel in 2015, when she was 12 years old and he was 15. Jack Seppel was born on January 9, 1999. His mother, Tracy Dalton, was married to a man named Ricky. Jack's relationship with his father, who passed away in 2019, was reportedly strained. Jack did not communicate with his brother, Jordan, but he did stay in touch with his sister, Nadia. Apart from his mother and sister, Jack did not have many close relationships, preferring to interact with people primarily through the internet and video games. According to Jack's acquaintances, he had a mixed reputation in school. On the one hand, he was remembered as a charming, fun, and lively kid. On the other hand, they recalled his dark side, which emerged when he became angry and displayed aggressive behavior towards himself and others. A mutual friend introduced Jack to Ashley through social media, a common way for teenagers to meet and form virtual friendships. As their online relationship grew, Ashley and Jack became close virtual friends. At the time, Ashley didn't have a smartphone and used her family's computer to access social media, so her family was aware of her friendship with Jack. During their long-distance friendship, Jack had relationships with other girls, and Ashley also had typical teenage experiences. Although they occasionally stopped communicating, their connection never completely faded, and they continued to stay in touch over the years. As they grew older, Ashley and Jack's relationship evolved. They started communicating through video calls, which led to a more intimate and romantic relationship. Jack became a familiar figure to Ashley's family, who would often greet him warmly when they saw him talking to the guys. He also sent Ashley gifts, such as teddy bears and purses, on multiple occasions. Ashley's family and friends noticed that she had a tendency to compare every boy she met to Jack. However, due to the significant time difference between their locations, Jack lived in Essex, while Ashley was in Vernon. They struggled to find time to talk, often waking up too early and going to bed too late. As Ashley turned 15 in 2018, she began to express a desire to meet Jack in person. However, her family refused to let her travel alone to another continent. Like many young couples, they occasionally argued, and when Ashley would block Jack on social media during these fights, he would find ways to contact her again, creating new accounts or sending messages through his sister or acquaintances. This behavior was seen as disturbing and intrusive by Ashley's loved ones, but she continued to insist that Jack was a kind and compassionate person. In October 2018, Jack, who was 19 at the time, got a tattoo of Ashley's name on his arm when she was just 16. Her parents thought this display of affection was excessive and warned her to be cautious. However, Jack soon began exhibiting jealous and violent behavior. He would become angry if he suspected Ashley was talking to other guys, despite continuing to date other girls himself. He claimed Ashley was his favorite and swore his loyalty to her alone. This incident marked the beginning of a disturbing pattern of behavior. Ashley's friends and family grew increasingly concerned as Jack's behavior escalated. One day, Ashley called a friend who was at Jack's house, and he wouldn't let her leave. According to the friend who overheard the conversation, Ashley surprisingly remained calm, as if she was used to such situations. She simply asked Jack to stop being crazy. Ashley confided in her friends about the incident but didn't tell her parents. However, her friends strongly advised her to cut off all contact with Jack. Despite his history of fights and problematic behavior, Ashley and Jack continued to reconcile. At just 18 years old, Ashley had known Jack since her early teens, but she seemed unaware of the extent to which he had manipulated her from a young age. Ashley started working at fast food restaurants and department stores to save money for leisure activities. Her first purchase was a tablet, which allowed her to use social media more privately. She then began saving for a trip. During her senior year of high school, Ashley, a spiritual and inquisitive person, had a profound moment of insight after reading the Book of Mormon. This led her to start following the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ashley graduated from Sighton High School in 2020. She wanted to experience university life fully, so she decided to take a year-long break before continuing her studies. In the first half of 2021, Ashley continued working in saving money. In April of that year, she was baptized into Mormonism. With her newfound independence and financial stability, Ashley decided to travel to the UK to meet Jack in person and celebrate his birthday with him. Despite her parents' and friends' concerns, Ashley was determined to make the trip, as she was of legal age and had her own savings. Ashley left Canada for the UK on November 12, 2021, on a 6-month tourist visa. This was her first time leaving her homeland, and she was thrilled. The next day, November 13, 2021, Ashley met Jack in person for the first time. On the same day, Ashley updated her profile picture to a photo of them together. At 22 years old, Jack looked significantly older than Ashley, who was 19. His numerous tattoos, including those on his face, created a striking contrast with Ashley's youthful appearance. During her stay in London, Ashley lived with Jack in his house, located in a public housing estate in northwest Chelmsford. The neighborhood had a questionable reputation, but they spent time exploring the nicer areas of the city in Essex. Jack seemed like the same charming and caring person Ashley had met online, often showering her with compliments and taking romantic selfies. However, Jack's behavior was inconsistent, and he could be cruel at times. Despite being together daily, Ashley's tourist visa prevented her from working, and Jack was unemployed, relying on benefits. Occasionally, his mother Tracy, who lived nearby, provided support. Throughout her trip, Ashley regularly posted photos and updates on social media, showcasing their happy moments and romantic experiences. The pictures often featured they embracing, highlighting their seemingly joyful relationship. Ashley kept in regular touch with her family through video calls, and everything seemed fine at first. They even adopted a new kitten, Winston, which was a positive addition to their lives. Nevertheless, over time, Jack started to become more withdrawn and isolated. Ashley's trip to England was supposed to be an exciting adventure, but it quickly turned into a restrictive and isolating experience. Her boyfriend, Jack, had lost interest in exploring the country and instead preferred to stay indoors, smoke, and play video games. As a result, Ashley's options for activities were severely limited, and she was forced to do only what Jack wanted. Before arriving in England, one of Ashley's friends from church had arranged for her to meet some American missionaries who would be in Chelmsford at the same time. Ashley was eager to connect with them, but Jack refused to let her attend church on Sundays. Despite this, she continued to secretly communicate with the missionaries through text messages, deleting the conversations to avoid Jack's suspicion. Ashley's new friends soon realized that Jack was controlling and possibly abusive. When she confided in them about her problems, Ashley admitted that she knew she deserved better, but she was trying to keep Jack happy. However, the abuse went beyond controlling her communication. About 6 weeks into their trip, Jack became violent when he discovered that Ashley had blocked 2 UK phone numbers. He mistakenly believed that the numbers belonged to other men, triggering the jealous outburst. In a disturbing text message to his mother, Jack revealed that he had physically abused Ashley. Ashley created a secret profile where she documented the bruises she had sustained. She confided in her sister Haley about the abuse, but warned her not to tell their mother, fearing that their family would turn against Jack. After Jack overdosed on anti-anxiety medication in late December 2021, Ashley was tasked with overseeing his medication as his caregiver. She kept this responsibility a secret from her mother and friends, but Haley inadvertently revealed the truth. Ashley's mother expressed concern and asked her to return home, but Ashley insisted on staying with Jack until he recovered. In early January 2022, another disturbing incident occurred. Jack smashed a beer glass over Ashley's head, leaving her in tears. While Jack forced her to clean up the broken glass, Ashley contacted her sister via video call, revealing the true extent of her situation. Jack was frantic, pacing back and forth, yelling, and grinding his teeth. His distress prompted Ashley to contact her sister, Haley, who urged her to return home. However, Haley's concerns fell on deaf ears. A brief period of calm followed, marked by Jack's 23rd birthday celebration with his family, where everyone put on a united front and pretended everything was fine. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Jack's mother and stepfather organized a family vacation to a seaside town shortly after. The photos from the trip appeared perfect, showcasing a happy and tranquil Ashley, which brought relief to her parents, who remained unaware of the seriousness of the situation. In late January, an intense argument broke out, and Jack's behavior turned violent once again. He hit Ashley and threw a candle and a TV remote at her while she was video chatting with Haley, who was pleading with her to return home. Although Ashley had initially agreed, she ultimately decided to stay. Despite witnessing Jack's cruel nature, she clung to the hope that the charming person she once knew was still buried deep within him. Ashley was convinced that time, her love, or perhaps medical treatment could help Jack overcome his destructive tendencies, a sentiment that was echoed by her mother during subsequent conversations with Jack. Jack accused Ashley of cheating on him, physically abused her, and later apologized. Despite feeling guilty about his actions, Jack's behavior continued. The situation escalated on the morning of February 1, 2022, when Jack became angry with Ashley again. He accused her of abandoning him and seeing other people in secret. He demanded to see her phone and check her social media accounts to prove his allegations. Around 8 a.m., their neighbor Haley Borton Shaw heard Ashley's screams through the shared wall. Ashley soon showed up at Jack's doorstep, drawing attention to the distressing situation unfolding between them. Haley was shocked and Ashley appeared at her door, barefoot and crying, with a cut on her palm that was bleeding. Ashley explained that Jack had become enraged when he caught her looking at intimate photos of them. He had verbally abused her, physically attacked her, smashed her phone, and thrown her kitten against the wall. Despite Haley's concerns for Ashley's safety and fear that Jack might try to harm her, Ashley asked Haley not to call the police. Haley reluctantly agreed, but begged Ashley to see a doctor instead of returning to Jack's apartment. When Ashley refused, Haley decided to go and talk to Jack herself. During their conversation, Jack apologized for his actions and remained calm. Haley then left for a doctor's appointment around 9 a.m. Meanwhile, Jack's neighbor received a misdelivered package and brought it to his doorstep. Jack was hesitant to answer the door, which wasn't unusual since he was known to be an unfriendly and paranoid person. Around this time, Ashley called her family using Jack's cell phone, informing them of her situation. Ashley's mother was already aware of what was going on because Haley had previously confided in her about Jack's abusive behavior towards Ashley. Ashley's parents immediately bought her a return ticket for February 3rd to escape the abusive relationship. When she informed Jack, he offered to drive her to the airport. However, before she left, Ashley's mother made it clear that if Jack hurt her again, she would contact the police. She also advised Ashley to go straight to the airport if Jack assaulted her again. The conversation between Ashley and her family lasted for 3 hours before they ended the call. It was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford and 3 a.m. in Vernon when the call ended. A short time later, Jack sent a message to his mother, admitting to brutally beating Ashley again. During the assault, Ashley fell to the floor and possibly broke her arm. This violent incident occurred between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 a.m. Ashley managed to send several messages to her family and friends using Jack's phone, but since it was nighttime, no one responded immediately. She also reached out to her friends at the church in Chelmsford, asking for help and describing the emergency. Unfortunately, these messages were not received until hours later, when it was too late to intervene. Between 12:38 and 12:45, Jack violently attacked Ashley, choking her until she lost consciousness. He then proceeded to the kitchen, retrieved an 11-centimeter knife, and repeatedly stabbed Ashley's chest and stomach around 100 times, ultimately ending her life. Following the attack, Jack updated his social media profile picture with a photo of himself and Ashley, accompanied by the caption, "Always mine." He also recorded a video message for Haley, expressing his love for Ashley, apologizing, and stating that he couldn't let her go, adding that his mental state was unstable. The video, which was never sent, showed Ashley's body next to him. Meanwhile, in Vernon, Ashley's family discovered a large number of messages from her on their phones. They immediately contacted Jamie Ashworth, a family friend from their Mormon community in Chelmsford. Jamie and Tyler Borden, another acquaintance from the church, went to Jack's apartment in England. After knocking on the door and receiving no response, they called the police and left the scene. In a desperate attempt to cover his tracks, Jack texted Ashley's family and friends, pretending to be her. However, the messages from loved ones continued to pour in, and Jack ignored them. Meanwhile, they were frantically trying to reach Ashley. Eventually, Jack called his sister Nadia and confessed to killing Ashley, even going so far as to show her the body. This disturbing conversation took place at approximately 4:13 p.m. When the police arrived at the apartment 10 minutes after Jamie's call, they found that the situation had already turned tragic. They arrested Jack, who was covered in blood, on the spot. He told the officers that he had experienced a psychotic episode and confessed to the crime. As a result, he was taken into custody and sent to Chelmsford Prison. His trial was scheduled for September 7, 2022, at Chelmsford Crown Court. The court's psychiatric examination concluded that Jack was mentally fit to stand trial. However, the evidence against him was irrefutable, including a video recording of him admitting to the crime. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Jack immediately pleaded guilty. The judge then informed him that, given his confession, a life imprisonment sentence was inevitable. At the hearing, which took place under Judge Edward Murray at Chelmsford Crown Court, prosecutor Simon Spence detailed Jack's extensive criminal history, which dated back to his teenage years. During the hearing, Ashley's parents learned the disturbing truth about Jack. Jack had a history of run-ins with the law, including arrests for stalking, kidnapping, and violent assault. He had also been issued multiple restraining orders, including against his mother and former girlfriend. The revelation of Jack's extensive criminal record shocked and devastated Ashley's parents, who had never suspected the true nature of the man who had taken their daughter's life. During the hearing, the prosecution and defense discussed a letter written by Jack from prison, in which he apologized for his actions. The letter was later released to the media by Judge Murray, who cited the importance of transparency in the justice system. In the letter, Jack expressed regret to Ashley's family, especially her mother and sister Haley, acknowledging that nothing could undo the harm he had caused. Jack accepted responsibility for his actions and acknowledged that his mental state contributed to the tragedy. He also claimed to have previously discussed his mental health with Ashley. Ultimately, Jack was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Minhas Zaman. Minhas Zaman, a Canadian with a promising future. However, instead of attending York University to study mechanical engineering, he chose to deceive his parents and live a lie. As the expected graduation date drew near, maintaining this double life became increasingly difficult, severely impacting his mental state. This ultimately led to the tragic outcome of him murdering his entire family. In an attempt to gain attention, Minhas posted photos of his crime on his Discord channel. Initially, many believed it was a joke, but it soon became clear that the photos were genuine. Discord's anonymous features allowed Minhas to hide his true identity, making it challenging for users to uncover his real name, age, and location. In Bangladesh, a country plagued by poverty and overpopulation, many sought a better life abroad. Manaras, born in 1971, felt an insatiable desire to improve his circumstances. Despite the country's rapid development, Manaras yearned for more. He met and married Momtaz, born in India, and they shared a dream of building a better future together in Toronto, Canada. After 2 years of preparation, Manaras and Momtaz made the move to Toronto. They settled into their new life and eventually started a family. 6 years after their arrival, they welcomed a son, Minhas, followed by a daughter, Mesa, 2 years later. Momtaz and her husband Monarez were loving and dedicated parents who worked tirelessly to ensure their family's well-being and happiness. Momtaz was particularly close to their children and was known for her kindness and generosity. She spent a lot of time caring for her family and was always willing to lend a helping hand. In her community, Momtaz was a respected and well-liked figure, both in her neighborhood and among fellow Bangladeshi immigrants. Monarez was a more reserved person, but he was also highly respected in the community. He was a devout Muslim who prioritized his family's well-being above all else. As a taxi driver, Monarez was very familiar with the city of Toronto, thanks to his many years of experience. His dedication to his job earned him numerous awards, including being named the Best Employee of the Month and one of the top taxi drivers in his company. Both Momtaz and Monarez had high aspirations for their children, Melissa and Minhas. Having successfully navigated the challenges of moving to a big city themselves, they expected their children to achieve great things. They dreamed of their children securing high-paying, prestigious jobs that would bring them comfort and prosperity. After relocating from poor conditions, Monarez and Momtaz were determined to provide their children with every opportunity to succeed. They worked hard to achieve their aspirations, which led to gradual but steady success. The family's first major milestone was buying a modest house on Mallow Road in Scarborough. With careful financial planning, they then acquired 2 investment properties, one in Scarborough and another in nearby Danforth. Momtaz took charge of managing the properties, and over time, the family's wealth grew steadily. As the family's assets increased, Momtaz felt a greater sense of responsibility towards her 2 children and their 3 properties. To help with the workload, Momtaz's mother, Firoza Begum, moved from India to join the family. This allowed Momtaz to strike a better balance between her work and personal life. In 2006, the family upgraded to a larger 4-bedroom house in Markham. At the time, it was widely believed that a career in medicine or engineering was the key to success. Monarez and Momtaz wanted their children to pursue these fields, with Minhas aspiring to become a neurosurgeon and Minhas aiming to become an engineer. However, their children had different plans. Melissa, in particular, was a rebellious child who resisted her parents' views and often pushed them away, despite showing great potential. Melissa frequently ran away from home, drank excessively, and used illicit substances, leading to reckless behavior. This behavior prompted strict and sometimes questionable intervention from her parents. If she failed to return home on time, she would be forced to spend the night outside. However, her mother, Momtaz, would occasionally unlock the back door to allow her to enter. The conflicts between Melissa and her father often escalated, drawing the attention of the police. In contrast, Minhas had a distinctly different personality. He was often described as shy and introverted, but he shared a warm and loving relationship with his mother. Momtaz was extremely devoted to her son, often giving in to his wishes and catering to his needs. She would drive him wherever he needed to go, cook his meals, keep his room tidy, and greet him after school with a home-cooked meal. As the eldest son, Minhas faced pressure from his parents to succeed and meet their high expectations. To cope with this pressure, he found solace in the world of video games, particularly massively multiplayer online MMO games like Perfect World. In this virtual world, Minhas could express himself freely and connect with people worldwide, overcoming his shyness and self-doubt. The game became a refuge for him, and he spent most of his free time immersed in it. Minhas's life was quite routine. Apart from accompanying his father to the mosque, he spent most of his time in his room, playing online games with his friends. However, his life took a significant turn after he graduated from high school. He thrilled his parents with the news that he had been accepted into the mechanical engineering program at York University. Initially, this achievement brought immense joy to his parents, Monarez and Momtaz. However, it also intensified the pressure on Minhas, as he was now expected to excel and had no room for error. As a result, he became even more introverted and immersed himself in the online world. Minhas started playing an updated version of the Perfect World game, which involved a group of players and a set of rules. He used the social network Discord to stay in touch with his friends and fellow players. The game's atmosphere was generally friendly, and players often formed close bonds with one another. In fact, many of them remained in contact even outside of the game. Minhas felt more at ease expressing himself in the virtual world of the game than he did in real life, where the atmosphere was often tense. As a result, he found solace in the game, using it as an escape from the stresses of reality. In contrast, Melissa acted out her frustrations in the real world, frequently clashing with her parents over various issues. Her rebellious behavior eventually led to an arrest for shoplifting, although she was fortunate to have the charges dropped in exchange for community service. After leaving home to live with her boyfriend, the tension in the household did not dissipate. Instead, it seemed to intensify, putting even more pressure on Minhas to find ways to cope. As a result, he became even more deeply immersed in the game, using it as a means of escaping the increasingly unbearable reality at home. As Melissa broke free from her parents' expectations, they began to pin their hopes on her son, Minhas, as the family's savior. They boasted about his engineering career at York University, but this turned out to be a fabrication. In reality, Minhas attended Seneca Community College, a less prestigious institution. Minhas struggled academically, felt isolated, and abandoned his faith, which deeply disappointed his devout parents. He often expressed frustration about his parents' constant interference in his life, which affected his personal relationships. Minhas met a girl online, which infuriated his parents and further fueled his resentment. However, he found a sense of independence through the online game Perfect World, where he connected with friends in a community on Discord. Initially, Minhas performed well in school, but his grades began to slip as his gaming obsession spiraled out of control. Minhas' excessive gaming habits started to take a toll on his academic performance. He began skipping classes and struggled to keep up with his studies, resulting in him having to retake several subjects. Eventually, he lost interest in studying altogether and stopped attending classes, opting to focus solely on gaming instead. To avoid arousing his parents' suspicions, Minhas would leave home every day pretending to go to York University. He wasn't actually attending classes. Instead, he would spend his days playing games at a cafe on his laptop, working out at the gym, and then returning to gaming until late at night. In online conversations with his gaming friends, Minhas would occasionally joke about leaving the group and make cryptic comments about potentially going to prison. However, these statements were not taken seriously by his online friends, as they were familiar with his tendency to make humorous remarks. Additionally, Minhas often made jokes about sensitive topics such as homophobia and religion, but since it was a gaming community, no one took his comments seriously. Minhas' sense of humor took a darker and more aggressive turn over time. He started making jokes that were intentionally provocative, trying to elicit a reaction from others in the community. However, his attempts at humor were so off-putting that they led to multiple complaints. Ultimately, the community administrators banned him due to his behavior. Minhas became more and more isolated. In contrast, Melissa turned her life around, repaired her relationship with her parents, and even gained admission to York University. From the outside, the family appeared happy and successful, with new beginnings and a promising future. As Minhas realized he was about to lose his privileged status as the golden child, he committed a horrific crime on July 27, 2019, just one day before his expected graduation ceremony. On that day, the family was preoccupied with their daily routines. Minhas' mother and grandmother went about their usual schedule, attending a daybreak event, unaware of the impending tragedy. Minhas began to carry out his horrific plan by sneaking into his mother's bedroom. He struck her on the head with a crowbar, knocking her unconscious, and then slit her throat to ensure she was dead. He repeated this brutal act with his grandmother. After committing these heinous crimes, Minhas calmly returned to his room and opened Discord, where he sent a disturbing photo of his mother's mutilated body next to the crowbar. The recipients of the photo were initially unsure if it was a joke, as Minhas was known for his dark humor. However, the image was extremely realistic and did not appear to be a prank. Minhas was a well-known figure in the perfect world gaming community, but his behavior had always been unsettling, earning him a negative reputation among many players. The situation took a disturbing turn when Minhas posted 2 photos that seemed to show a murder scene. The images were extremely realistic and did not seem to be a joke. Minhas then made a chilling post claiming that he had killed his mother and grandmother and was waiting for his sister and father to return home so he could do the same to them. As the situation worsened and became more intense, other gamers began to take Minhas seriously, fearing that his threats could lead to more deaths. Discord users were convinced that they were witnessing a series of crimes unfold in real time, but felt powerless to intervene. Desperate to prevent further harm, players tried to uncover Minhas' identity, but he had hidden his personal information, leaving no clues about his name, age, or whereabouts. In an effort to gather more information, users reached out to Minhas' friend, Junior, asking him to share any details he might know. When Junior confronted Minhas about the disturbing images, Minhas revealed that his threats were genuine and that he planned to kill his father and sister soon. Meanwhile, Melissa returned home to an eerily quiet house. Unbeknownst to her, Minhas was waiting inside. As she entered the house, he attacked her with a crowbar, striking her on the head, and then slit her throat. After committing the crime, Minhas took a photo of Melissa's body and sent it to his friend John via private message. Minhas posted a photo with a disturbing message, claiming that he had struggled with his sister Melissa for 10 minutes, during which she cried and screamed. In a private message to John, Minhas expressed extreme self-loathing, stating that his parents would be ashamed of him and that he was a coward and subhuman. Minhas then sent John several more photos, including one of the murder weapon and a selfie with a bloody knife. John was horrified and shared these photos with the rest of the group, confirming that Minhas had indeed committed a third murder. Group members quickly saved the photos as evidence against Minhas. Meanwhile, Minhas continued to act normally, waiting for his father to return home. When his father, Monaras, entered the garage, Minhas ambushed him, stabbing him in the neck, just like his other victims. Minhas took a photo of the victim, which the group was unable to prevent. In a shocking turn of events, Minhas shared a disturbing message with online friends, stating, "I consider myself a coward and a loser. As an atheist, I don't believe in an afterlife, so I feared death and wanted others to die instead, sparing them suffering. I realize now how pathetic and selfish I've been." What followed was even more alarming. Minhas told another online friend that he had murdered his entire family and was prepared to spend the rest of his life in prison. He then invited this friend to view photos of the crime scene. However, the story takes a crucial turn. One of the online friends discovered a way to obtain Minhas' IP address, which could reveal his location. With this information, the group was able to track Minhas to his home in Toronto. A user from Minnesota, who was part of the online conversation, contacted their local police department, which in turn alerted the Toronto police to Minhas' location. The police began their investigation after receiving information from an anonymous source. Meanwhile, Minhas was still active online, chatting with users who were inquiring about his next steps. He claimed he would try new things, including drinking, smoking, and reconnecting with an ex-girlfriend. However, it was only a matter of time before the police caught up with him. They were able to track his IP address, contacted his internet service provider, and obtained his physical address. Surprisingly, Menhez did not take steps to cover his digital tracks, despite being an avid gamer and computer user. Just 12 hours after the crime, officers arrived at the Menhez residence. As they looked up, they saw Menhez looking out of his bedroom window. At this point, the police had limited information and evidence, relying mostly on tips from online users. They were uncertain about the accuracy of the reports. But Menhez unexpectedly made the police's job easier. After posting a farewell message on Discord, announcing that the police had arrived, he voluntarily went downstairs, opened the door, and surrendered to the authorities. When questioned by the police, Menhez responded that this was his family's home and that they would discover the truth for themselves. The bodies of Manaras and Melissa were the first to be found, followed by Momotaz and Firoza, near the entrance to the house. Menhez was immediately arrested by the police on suspicion of murder. He was then taken to the local police station for further questioning. During the interrogation, Menhez displayed unusual calmness, showing no visible emotion. The lack of emotional response was notable, as if he was discussing an inconsequential event. He was ultimately charged with 4 counts of murder, 3 first-degree murders and 1 second-degree murder. In court, the evidence strongly indicated his guilt. The Perfect World gaming community had preserved a record of all his online messages, which serve as evidence against him, confirming his culpability to a great extent. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Summer Baldwin. Summer Baldwin, born in 1976 in Washington, was renowned for her kind and vibrant personality. As a bright student with many friends, she aspired to pursue an acting career. Following high school, Summer enrolled in community college but struggled with her studies. Seeking a change of environment and new opportunities, she moved to Texas with her friends, supported by her parents who hoped she could start anew. However, it is uncertain when Summer's life started to decline. She struggled with addiction to alcohol and illicit drugs, but unfortunately did not reach out to her family for support. As her addiction worsened, she lost her job and began associating with people who had a history of crime. Her dreams of becoming an actress were shattered, and she was eventually forced to work as an escort to make ends meet. Summer's parents remained oblivious to their daughter's struggles, believing she was living a successful life. The information provided about Summer's friends was limited. However, a significant detail emerged. A few months before her death, Summer had been a key witness in a major federal counterfeiting case. This revelation suggested that her murder might have been a contract killing by a criminal gang, drawing the attention of the FBI and putting the investigation under intense scrutiny. The investigation led to the first suspects. Rebecca, Summer's best friend, was called in for questioning by the police. She provided insight into Summer's occupation and mentioned several of her boyfriends, one of whom had a history of aggressive behavior, including physical abuse and persistent stalking after their breakup. This man became the initial suspect in the case. Summer's ex-boyfriend was detained and brought to the station on the same day. However, he vehemently denied any involvement in the case and appeared genuinely surprised and distraught upon learning of Summer's death. Furthermore, he had a solid alibi for the night before the tragedy, having been involved in a drunken brawl at a bar and spending the night in a cell with another individual. As a result, the police were forced to release the first and, at the time, only suspect. Another friend and colleague of Summer named Marguerite provided crucial information to the investigation. Marguerite reported that she saw Summer on the evening of September 11th at a convenience store parking lot. They had a brief conversation. Marguerite recalled that a red van pulled into the parking lot, and a young, physically fit Latino man got out to enter the store, likely to make a purchase. While he was inside, Summer exited the van from the passenger side to greet Marguerite. Summer mentioned that the man was a client she had met for the second time in recent days. After the man returned to the van, He got behind the wheel, and Summer quickly re-entered the vehicle. Marjorie didn't notice which direction the van took when it left, nor did she know where Summer and the man were headed. She noted that she had never seen the man before and thought he was not from the area. Her description of him was limited due to the darkness, but she remembered that he had very short hair, similar to a military style. On September 13, 2005, a sanitation worker discovered a suspicious suitcase in a landfill in Lubbock City, Texas, USA. When he opened the suitcase, he was startled to see the body of a woman with red hair. The victim's body had many bruises. The victim's leg was tattooed with the word "Summer." The suitcase, which tragically became her coffin, presented a peculiar appearance. Externally, it was covered in garbage and waste, yet surprisingly, it showed no signs of wear and tear, and its wheels appeared brand new. Upon closer inspection, the interior revealed perfectly intact tags and a lining that seemed untouched, giving the impression that the suitcase was brand new. Notably, the plastic attachment for the price tag remained intact, suggesting that the purchaser had not removed it. Further investigation revealed that this particular brand of suitcase was widely available in numerous stores throughout the city. However, this specific large model was only sold in 2 stores. A crucial breakthrough came when the perfectly preserved barcode led investigators to a Walmart store in the same area where Summer was last seen alive. Records showed that 2 identical suitcases were purchased on the day preceding the gruesome discovery, one in the afternoon and the other around 2 a.m., a timing that raised suspicions due to its unusual nature. Police officers promptly visited the store and obtained the surveillance camera footage. After reviewing the footage, they discovered that an elderly couple had purchased the first suitcase. Initially, they didn't raise any suspicions, but they were tracked down and were able to present the suitcase, explaining that it was bought for a vacation. However, the second suitcase was purchased by a young, athletic Latino man with very short hair, similar to a military haircut. This raised suspicions that he might be the person seen with Summer in the supermarket parking lot, as described by a witness. Additionally, the man bought disposable gloves at checkout, further arousing suspicions. The store's external surveillance cameras provided more information, showing the man leaving the store with the suitcase and loading it into a red van. With too many coincidences, the police believed they had identified the suspect and now needed to confirm his identity, locate him, and bring him in for questioning. The man took extreme precautions to avoid detection, using cash instead of a credit card to prevent leaving a digital trail. However, he overlooked the parking lot surveillance cameras, which clearly captured his vehicle's license plate number. The police quickly tracked the vehicle to a rental car company and identified the renter as Rosendo Rodriguez, a reservist in the U.S. Marine Corps. Rosendo had a clean record and was in town for a brief training stint with his unit. Initially, it was difficult for the police to locate Rosendo, as he wasn't staying at the same hotel as his unit. But with his personal details in hand, the police discovered that he had withdrawn a large sum of cash from an ATM at a different hotel, likely the money used to purchase the suitcase and gloves. Further investigation revealed that Rosendo had checked into this hotel under the name Thomas Rosendo, matching his physical description, on September 11th. It appeared that Rosendo had used an alias for unknown reasons. The investigation got a lucky break. Although Rosendo had already checked out of his hotel room, it hadn't been cleaned yet, and it contained crucial evidence. The carpet, bed, and walls had brown stains and splatters that looked like dried blood. A tag from a new suitcase was found near the bed. The trash had used contraceptives and disposable gloves in it. Forensic analysis confirmed the dried blood belonged to Summer. DNA on the contraceptives and gloves matched both Summer and Rosendo. This proved they had found the killer. However, Rosendo had already left the city by then. With this information, it was easy to track him down. Rosendo Rodriguez was born on March 26, 1980, in Wichita Falls, Texas. He came from a low-income family of Mexican immigrants and had a difficult childhood. His father, who struggled with alcoholism, was abusive to his wife and children. As a result, Rosendo was exposed to violence from an early age. He was aggressive and frequently got into fights at school. However, as he matured, he learned to manage his anger. After finishing high school, Rosendo attended Texas Tech University. He lived on his own and worked various jobs, including at a pizzeria and as an office clerk. Eventually, he decided to join the U.S. Marine Corps. His colleagues in the military described him as calm, disciplined, and reliable. They also saw him as a good friend who was always willing to help. Rosendo was well-educated and physically attractive, making him popular with women. On September 15th, Rosendo was arrested at his home in San Antonio. When the police arrived, he remained calm and seemed unaware of the seriousness of the situation. During the search, the police found a striped shirt and shorts that matched the outfit he wore when buying a suitcase. This was caught on surveillance footage. The police also seized his laptop and mobile phone. Initially, Rosendo refused to speak and denied any involvement in Summer Baldwin's murder for several weeks. However, faced with overwhelming evidence against him, he began to provide statements on the advice of his attorney. In these statements, he shared his own account of events, which notably diverged from the reconstruction put together by forensic experts. Rosendo initially stayed at a different hotel than his fellow servicemen due to a booking mistake. Although he realized the error after checking in, he chose not to relocate since the military leadership deemed it unnecessary. However, he failed to explain why he used a different name to register at the hotel on September 10th. That evening, Rosendo rented a van to get around the city more easily. He claimed to have met Summer Baldwin by coincidence. According to his account, he spotted a blonde woman sitting on a roadside bench, covering her face with her hands and seemingly crying. Concerned, he pulled over to check on her and see if she needed assistance. They started talking, and after she calmed down, they went to his hotel room, where they chatted, had a few drinks, but did not engage in any intimate activities. The next morning, Rosendo drove Summer home. They made plans to meet again in the evening. At around 9 p.m., he picked her up from the same location and they went to a supermarket. There, Summer ran into her friend Marjorie. Afterward, they returned to the hotel. According to Rosendo, he and Summer engaged in consensual intimacy at the hotel. However, the situation took a turn when Summer allegedly became aggressive and demanded money. This caught Rosendo off guard, as he claimed he was unaware that Summer was a sex worker. When he refused to pay, Summer reportedly pulled out a knife and threatened him. Rosendo managed to disarm her and punched her in the face, causing her nose to bleed. He claimed that he was acting in self-defense and did not intend to harm her. Shortly after, Summer collapsed onto the bed and began convulsing, foaming at the mouth. Rosendo stated that he attempted to help her but was hesitant to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation due to the blood and foam on her face. After a minute, Summer stopped breathing. Realizing Summer was dead, Rosendo panicked. He went to a nearby store, purchased a suitcase and gloves, and returned to the hotel. He then placed Summer's body in the suitcase and disposed of it in a dumpster, knowing it would be taken to the landfill the next morning. Afterward, he checked out of the hotel, returned the rental car, and drove back to San Antonio, pretending as though nothing had happened. Inconsistencies in the suspect's story raised suspicions among investigators. Rosendo Rodriguez's lies were evident due to numerous discrepancies in his account. One inconsistency arose when Marjorie, who met Summer in the parking lot on the night of the crime, stated that Summer mentioned the man was a client she had previously met for a paid encounter. However, Rosendo claimed their interaction was consensual, which contradicts evidence on Summer's body indicating she was taken advantage of. It is possible their initial encounter was consensual, leading Summer to agree to meet him again. Rosendo also claimed he only hit Summer once to calm her down, and she died from a seizure. But the autopsy revealed around 30 fresh bruises on Baldwin's head and body, as well as several stab wounds. Furthermore, evidence indicates she was alive when he packed her into the suitcase, which contradicts his claim that she was already dead. A search of Rosendo's laptop revealed a disturbing information in the days leading up to his arrest. He had been actively searching for information about Summer, including whether she was being searched for and if her body had been found in a landfill. Rosendo also frequently searched for information on Joanna Catherine Rogers, a 16-year-old girl from Lubbock who had gone missing a year and a half prior. Rosendo agreed to a plea deal that included a reduced sentence and no death penalty in exchange for explaining what happened to Joanna. He said he met Joanna, a high school student, in late April 2004. After a few meetings, they went to his hotel room on May 4th, where they got into an argument over money and potential rape allegations. The argument escalated, and Rosendo panicked, covering Joanna's mouth to quiet her, which unintentionally led to her death. In a desperate attempt to dispose of the body, Rosendo put it in his suitcase and threw it into a dumpster. This was the same method he used a year and a half later to dispose of Summer's body. Initially, Rosendo admitted to these events but later claimed his confession was false and that he had been coerced into making it. The police realized they needed to find Joanna's body to build a stronger case, so they launched a massive search of the city dump. Over a year later, they made a miraculous discovery, a suitcase containing Joanna's remains, despite severe decomposition. DNA testing confirmed the identity of the remains. This new evidence allowed authorities to charge Rosendo as a serial offender with a consistent modus operandi, committing similar heinous crimes. During the trial, the verdict was clear: Rosendo was guilty of first-degree murder. The court decided on the death penalty, largely due to the fact that Summer Baldwin was 3 months pregnant when she was murdered. This aggravating factor was a key consideration in the sentencing. Rosendo was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Rosendo and his lawyers filed multiple appeals, claiming errors and misconduct by investigators. However, all appeals were rejected. While on death row, Rosendo maintained a blog on criminal justice and policy issues. On March 27, 2018, Rosendo Rodriguez was executed for his crimes at Huntsville Prison in Texas, one day after his 38th birthday. This marked the 4th execution in Texas and the 7th in the United States that year, nearly a decade after his conviction. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Klondike Bishimbayev. Klondike Bishimbayev was born on April 11, 1980, in Gil, Kazakh SSR. Klondike Bishimbayev grew up with his younger sister Arujin, born in 1984. He received 3 higher educations, studying at Kazakh Academy of Management, Taz University, and George Washington University through a presidential scholarship. At 26, he defended his PhD thesis in economic sciences. Klondike began his career as a bank manager in 2000. He briefly interned at the Ministry of Economy, then held senior positions in large companies before returning to the ministry in 2016. He became the young head of the ministry but was dismissed 8 months later due to a bribery scandal, sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, he was released on parole after just 1 year. In his personal life, Klondike was married twice. His first wife, whom he married in 1999 and had a son, in 2000. They divorced in 2004. In 2006, he married, with whom he had 3 children before divorcing in 2020. After a few years, he married Sultanat Nuknova. Sultanat Nuknova was born on May 15, 1992, in Pavlodar, Kazakhstan. She was the youngest of two children to businessman father and economist mother. Her uncle was a prominent politician. As a schoolgirl, Sultanat became interested in astrology, studying literature and making accurate predictions for friends and classmates. She turned her hobby into a career, achieving success quickly. Sultanat promoted her astrological services on social media, offering consultations, forecasts, and guidance on goal achievement, career choice, and spiritual growth. She also gave advice on love affairs and relationships, with a client base consisting only of women and girls. She quickly achieved financial independence by doing what she loved. Her services were in high demand, with consultations scheduled months in advance. She had gained a large following on social media and was living her dream life. In spring 2022, Klondike stumbled upon Sultanat's page on a popular social network. He liked Sultanat and decided to contact her for an astrological consultation, but she turned him down, saying she only served women. This rejection only fueled his interest, and the politician persistently tried to get her attention, showering her with compliments, convinced that only she could help him as a trusted specialist. Sultanat was flattered but refused to meet Klondike, who repeatedly asked her out despite Sultanat offering online consultations. He persisted for months, gathering information about her life, habits, and interests, but she remained uninterested. Sultanat initially refused to meet the man, but eventually agreed to a meeting for face-to-face counseling. Despite his good impression, polite behavior, and courtesy, she told her brother that he was not her type and they wouldn't match. Initially, Sultanat was not worried about Klondike because she knew she could keep him. However, within a month, the situation changed when Klondike gained influence by befriending a respected older member of the family, Sultanat's grandmother. Klondike asked to speak to Sultanat's grandmother, asking for her support in case Sultanat changed her mind about marrying him. This gesture touched Sultanat, but she still refused to pursue a relationship with him. Sultanat visited her parents in Pavlodar in fall 2022 and mentioned no serious changes in her personal life were expected. She confided in her brother that the 12-year age difference with Klondike confused her and she wasn't attracted to him, also citing astrological incompatibility. Sultanat's brother was shocked to see a post on his social media that his sister had accepted Klondike's marriage proposal, just a month after their visit. This news surprised both her family and friends, as she had recently said that nothing serious would happen. A few months later, in December 2022, they held a luxury wedding at a budget establishment in Astana. The marriage was not officially registered, with they opting for a mosque ceremony instead. Sultanat's attitude towards her partner changed significantly after the wedding. She praised his intelligence, education, and conversation skills to friends, and denied his involvement in a corruption case that led to his brief imprisonment, claiming he was framed. From the outside, they seemed happy. He showered her with gifts, and she called him the perfect husband. Friends envied their relationship, thinking she was lucky. However, this didn't last. After the wedding, they moved into his parents' house, where his mother, Almira, spoiled her with gifts and protected her from household chores, but couldn't shield her from her son's true nature. Sultanat would periodically visit her parents with her husband, but she wouldn't invite them to her home because it would annoy Klondike and cause arguments. At first, none of her relatives were aware of this. However, less than a month after the wedding, on New Year's Eve, Sultanat's brother visited and witnessed a disturbing scene. A large, festive table had been set, but the celebration was only for the immediate family. When Klondike's cousin and his wife arrived with gifts for everyone, Sultanat was embarrassed because she didn't have a gift in return. She quickly found a solution by giving Klondike's cousin's wife a bottle of expensive perfume that her husband had bought her the day before, but she hadn't had a chance to open it yet. Klondike was not just displeased, but enraged by her actions. He yelled at her, claiming she had no right to give away something he had paid for, and began insulting her. The guests quickly left, and when her parents tried to intervene, they were rudely shut down. In a fit of rage, Klondike overturned the table, spilling food and drinks everywhere, and ruining the New Year's Eve celebration. Sultanat's brother was shocked by the scene and didn't know how to react. The next day, Sultanat confided in him over the phone that her husband's behavior had changed dramatically since their wedding, and she was unsure of the reason, but hoped the situation would improve with time. Sultanat Nukanova's brother advised her to end the relationship and return home, but she flatly refused. 2 months later, she sent him selfies showing severe bruises on her face, asking him not to ask any questions. Concerned, her brother tried to contact her, but she didn't answer his calls. He then reached out to her husband, Klondike, who agreed to meet with him. During their meeting, Klondike told Sultanat's brother to stay out of their business and refused to explain the cause of the bruises on his wife's face. Klondike was also unable to account for Sultanat's whereabouts, which filled him with uneasy thoughts. Fortunately, Sultanat was eventually found at her parents' country home. Despite the pleas of loved ones, Sultanat returned to her husband, insisting that she loved him and was willing to do anything to save their marriage. For a while, he behaved impeccably, showering her with gifts and promising to change for her sake. They even took a vacation together to a popular resort in the Maldives, where they appeared to be very happy. Sultanat didn't explicitly complain about her marriage, but her behavior and appearance changed. She lost weight, became withdrawn, and wore revealing clothing, possibly to hide bruises. She stopped working as an astrologer and blogger, and only posted happy photos with her husband on social media. Klondike took away her source of income, making her reliant on him. She was not allowed to socialize without his permission and was monitored at all times. Despite appearing perfect to outsiders, their relationship was actually controlling and suffocating. Sultanat confessed to her friend that her husband exerted total control over her, forbidding her to work or contact her parents without his knowledge, and was irrationally jealous, accusatory, and abusive. Despite her friend's horror and advice to leave him, she insisted she just wanted to talk, not be advised. They sought help from a family psychologist to save their marriage. Sultanat's husband rejected her therapist options and instead chose his own specialist, who blamed Sultanat for all their problems. She suspected her husband had hired the therapist to humiliate her. In summer 2023, Sultanat tried to leave him and stay with her parents, but her husband appeared a week later, asking for another chance and suggesting a change of environment to save their marriage. Sultanat hoped having a child would change her husband's attitude, but she couldn't get pregnant. After a family dinner in October, she briefly left her husband and moved into a rented apartment found by her brother. However, she returned to her husband 10 days later and even remarried him in a mosque ceremony, which she personally told her family about. On November 5th, she invited her family and close friends to her cousin's restaurant. Klondike made a good impression with his chivalrous behavior, being attentive and affectionate towards her. Everyone believed his feelings were genuine, but tragedy was looming. On November 9th, a relative contacted Sultanat's brother over the phone, sounding frightened as she asked about the truth of a social media rumor. After clarification, she shared a news link which reported that a former economy minister had taken the life of his young wife. Sultanat had asked to stay with him for a night after threatening to leave her husband. He agreed and told her where to find the spare keys, but she never arrived and her phone stopped working. He rushed to her house, but found no one there, and her husband was not answering his phone, which made things even more concerning. The decision was made to immediately go to the family restaurant, where Sultanat was last in contact, to search for answers. While on the way, he received a call from his frightened parents, who had also read the news and were trying to find out what had really happened. However, he couldn't provide them with any information and only promised to look into it. When he arrived at the restaurant, he was met by police officers who expressed their condolences and informed him that his sister had sadly passed away before receiving medical attention. Overwhelmed and disbelieving, he struggled to accept the news, but tragically, it was confirmed to be true. By the time he arrived, the main suspect, Klondike, had already been arrested and taken to the station. Klondike denied any guilt, claiming that the event was a terrible accident and that he was trying to help his wife. Also, the restaurant owner was taken into custody on suspicion of being involved in the incident. Several months ago, on the evening of November 8, 2023, Sultanat and Klondike and their friends attended a concert by singer Dima Bilan. The loud music made it difficult for their friends to follow the conversation between the spouses, who got into a heated argument. Initially, their friends thought they were just discussing something, but it soon became clear that they was engaged in a full-blown fight. They stormed out of the concert hall without saying a word to anyone and went to the restaurant bow, where they continued to quarrel in a private VIP booth. Camera footage shows Klondike taking several bottles of alcohol from the bar and joining his wife in the booth. As they drank wine and discussed their relationship, she told him that she couldn't continue like this and planned to leave him. Infuriated by her statement, Klondike started shouting and threatening her, even slapping Sultanat. After the altercation, she called her brother and told him she would be coming to his house for the night, having finally made up her mind to leave her husband. Around midnight, she stepped outside, intending to go to her brother's house, but her husband caught up with her and the argument continued. The surveillance footage reveals a 15-minute argument between them, after which Klondike convinced his spouse to re-enter the building. They continued to quarrel in the vestibule and eventually secluded themselves in a stall with no camera coverage, making it impossible to determine exactly what occurred inside. In the hallway, cameras recorded Klondike aggressively pursuing his wife, Sultanat, as she attempted to create distance. He grabbed her hands, shook her, and pushed her against the wall. Klondike's lawyer downplayed these actions, describing them as stroking. However, Sultanat tried to escape and locked herself in the toilet to evade her husband's aggression. Undeterred, he kicked the door, resulting in corresponding injuries. After forcing his wife to open the door, Klondike physically assaulted her, striking her multiple times in the face. He berated her, claiming that she lived at his expense. The events that followed are unclear, but Klondike alleged that his wife had an angry outburst and, in a fit of rage, removed all her clothes and jewelry, flushing them down the toilet to demonstrate her independence from him. According to another account, Klondike allegedly forced his wife to undress, intending to humiliate her further after the gold jewelry was lost down the drain. This led to Klondike becoming enraged, punching his wife in the face multiple times, and then pushing her with such force that she fell and hit the toilet. However, during the trial, Klondike claimed that his wife was intoxicated and had fallen several times while undressing, hitting her head on the tiles and plumbing fixtures. Klondike and his wife had planned to go home after leaving the restaurant, but he refused to drive due to his intoxication. He was ashamed of his drunken wife, who was wearing only underwear under her coat and didn't want to call a cab. They decided to return to their VIP booth instead. However, when Sultanat stopped to look at her reflection in the mirror, her husband forcefully pushed her towards the exit. This quickly escalated into a brutal assault, as he mercilessly beat her with his hands and feet and dragged her by the hair. At around 7 o'clock in the morning, he dragged her back to the VIP cabin, where he continued his attack. Klondike ultimately caused severe harm to Sultanat, but during the trial, he claimed he had no involvement in her injuries. According to him, she had fallen and hit the floor and furniture on her own, and then fell asleep on the sofa. He alleged that he noticed a bruise on her face, but rather than seeking medical attention, he consulted a fortune teller to determine if everything was all right with his wife. The fortune teller told Klondike his wife was drunk and needed sleep, so he calmed down and didn't touch her. Later, he realized she wasn't breathing and called his brother, Bakan Banov, also the restaurant owner. Together, they deleted CCTV footage, claiming it showed his wife's indecent behavior. Banov called an ambulance in the evening, but she had already died. He claimed to have tried CPR, but it was too late. Both brothers were arrested by law enforcers. Klondike's former wife, Nazim, was also under scrutiny several years ago when her then-husband was arrested on corruption charges. She defended him at the time, but soon after his release, she filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and claiming she had outgrown the marriage. However, after her ex-husband was accused of brutally murdering his new girlfriend, Nazim gave a candid interview, admitting that she believes him to be capable of such a crime. She explained that her 14-year marriage to Klondike changed dramatically in 2011 after the birth of their second child. Klondike became increasingly aggressive, selfish, and narcissistic, thinking that the world should revolve around him. Nazim also revealed that her husband frequently cheated on her, openly flaunting his infidelities. However, it wasn't until his phone data was accessed during his 2017 arrest that she discovered the full extent of his cheating. He had multiple mistresses, and they constantly changed. After Klondike was released from prison, his behavior became even more violent and aggressive, according to Nazim. A disagreement erupted between them a month later, sparked by a minor issue. However, Klondike's reaction was excessive, as he became enraged and ripped a toilet lid from the wall with his bare hands, throwing it at Nazim. Although she dodged, the incident made her realize that the marriage was unsalvageable in her opinion. Klondike had apparently restrained his true nature for a long time because he knew Nazim wouldn't tolerate his darker impulses. Klondike had a sinister strategy. He initially chose a victim, tested her limits, and pushed her to see how much she would tolerate. Once he was convinced that she wouldn't leave or complain, he revealed his true self as a sophisticated sadist. The trial of Klondike began in March 2024, with relatives of Sultanat pushing for an open trial to prevent him from using his wealth and connections to influence witnesses and judges. Klondike, who had previously been convicted of a serious offense but released on parole, requested a jury trial to avoid a life sentence. A jury of 12 was selected, and in this case, a life sentence would require a unanimous decision from all jurors and the judge, a very unlikely outcome. Klondike denies premeditated murder, claiming the event was an accident. He says his spouse provoked him, but video recordings contradict him. Initially, authorities considered charging him with domestic violence, a crime with lenient punishment in Kazakhstan. However, this sparked outrage, particularly from the victim's mother, who feels her son-in-law may get off too lightly, undermining her faith in justice. A law was approved in April 2024 to toughen penalties for domestic violence in Kazakhstan following public outrage. Klondike tried to pressure his brother into giving false testimony and also attempted to discredit his late wife in court, calling her an inadequate, unbalanced, and alcoholic who provoked him. He claimed he acted in a state of passion, hitting her only a few times, and that her other injuries were self-inflicted from falling under the influence of alcohol. However, Klondike was alleged that he didn't allow called medics for Sultanat and was instead concerned with deleting footage from cameras. Klondike ordered his brother to fake his wife's phone activity, making it seem like she was home. However, the plan didn't work. Klondike was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 24 years. Klondike's brother Bakan Banov was given a 4-year sentence for complicity. Sultanat's family expressed dissatisfaction with the court's decision. Her father hoped for a life sentence for his former son-in-law, calling any other verdict unfair. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rob Andrew. Brenda Evers, the future wife of Rob Andrew, was born on December 16, 1963, in Enid, Oklahoma. She grew up in a devout Christian family that prioritized faith and family values. Her childhood was filled with regular family meals, group prayers, and church attendance. As a result, Brenda developed into a quiet and peaceful individual who excelled academically and spent much of her free time volunteering at church. As a high school student, Brenda was a cheerleader for the soccer team and enjoyed dancing, but she avoided parties and social gatherings. She aspired to be like her mother, who was a model of piety and modesty. Brenda's goal was to become a housewife after marriage, devoting herself to her husband and children. At the age of 17, Brenda met her first love, Rob Andrew, who was the older brother of her friend. Despite their different denominational backgrounds, Rob was a Baptist and Brenda a Lutheran. They shared conservative views on life, a strong faith, and a dream of building a large and close-knit family. The friendly relationship between them blossomed into something more. Although they were separated by 125 miles when she started college in Winfield, Kansas, they maintained regular communication. To be closer to her partner, Brenda transferred to a university in Stillwater, Ohio, a year later. They eventually got married in the summer of 1984. As Rob's career took off, he received a job offer in Houston, Texas. Although he had initially hesitated, Brenda convinced him to take the opportunity. While Rob thrived as an advertising manager, Brenda completed her degree and secured a job in banking. She fell in love with the city's vibrant nightlife, impressive skyscrapers, and fast-paced lifestyle. Her time in Texas brought about a transformation in Brenda, as she overcame her initial shyness and developed a more outgoing personality. She started taking care of her appearance, dressing fashionably, wearing makeup, and building a large social network. Rob was unhappy with the changes he saw in his wife. He believed a woman of faith should be more subdued. Additionally, Rob was homesick and eager to return to his old life. When he was offered his old job back at an advertising agency in Oklahoma City, he jumped at the opportunity. However, Brenda was not supportive of his decision. They argued about it, but eventually found a compromise. They agreed that Rob would settle in the new location, find a suitable house, and if everything worked out, Brenda would join him. They lived apart for a few months, but eventually reunited. In the early 1990s, they moved into a luxurious house in the upscale neighborhood of Landsbrook. Brenda gave birth to a daughter 9 months later. She even quit her job to become a full-time homemaker and devote herself to raising their child. 4 years later, they welcomed the son Parker. It seemed like they had the perfect life, love, children, a beautiful home, and financial security. On November 20th, 2001, Rob had arranged to pick up the children from his ex-wife to spend the holiday with them. At the time, they were divorced. In the evening, Brenda greeted him at the door and asked him to go to the garage to help her with some faulty equipment. Rob was bending down when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, and a gunshot rang out. Around 6 p.m., emergency services received a call from Brenda Andrew. She reported that she was injured and her husband was dead. An ambulance rushed to the scene, where paramedics found a horrific scene in the garage. A man lay in a pool of blood, dead from a gunshot wound. His wife, Brenda, was shot in the arm but alive. Brenda's clothes were stained with blood, and she appeared detached from the situation. The paramedics believed she was in shock. She told them that she tried to give Rob first aid, but she thought he was dead. Brenda's hand was bandaged, and she was taken to the hospital. As the ambulance left, police began investigating the scene. They found a .22 caliber bullet lodged in the wall and a shotgun shell casing, indicating that multiple weapons were used. The officers also noticed that the victim still had his wallet on him, ruling out robbery as a motive. At the clinic, Brenda explained that she and Andrew were together when two masked and armed men suddenly entered the garage. Although she couldn't make out what they were shouting, one of the men shot Andrew twice, and the other wounded her as she tried to escape. The attackers then quickly fled the scene. Brenda claimed that Andrew was a kind and helpful person who didn't have any enemies. She acknowledged feeling frightened by the attack, especially since there were children in the house at the time. However, her account raised suspicions, and the police noticed several inconsistencies in her story. Notably, she mentioned that the children were present during the attack, but it was clear that they had not been prepared for a trip, contradicting her earlier statement. Interviews with neighbors yielded no useful information. To gain insight into Brenda and Rob's personal life, detectives questioned their friends and acquaintances, revealing marital problems since their second child's birth. Friends and Pastor Andrew reported that Rob confided in them about Brenda's abusive behavior and her hatred for their marriage. Ronnie Street, a close friend of the Roberts family, observed that Brenda's behavior had become unusual. She was open about her feelings, even with strangers, and her husband Rob seemed to love her unconditionally, forgiving her for her antics. Friends of the family noted that Brenda had undergone a significant change from being a typical housewife to someone with loose morals. There was substantial evidence to support these claims. Brenda seemed to be having a midlife crisis, dressing more provocatively and becoming secretive towards her husband. Rob soon discovered she was having an affair, which began in October 1997 with Rick Nunley, a co-worker from the Oklahoma bank. Brenda was married, but secretly dated someone for a year and then maintained occasional phone contact. She then started an affair with James Higgins, a local store owner, who was drawn to her bold style and flirting. They met secretly in a hotel room once or twice a week for about 5 years. Meanwhile, Brenda's husband, Rob, remained unaware of her infidelity. However, he couldn't help but notice that their marriage was falling apart. His wife had become distant, rarely speaking to him or spending time with him. Rob tried his best to hold the family together, hoping that things would eventually improve. In 2001, Brenda ended her affair with Higgins, but not because she wanted to salvage her marriage. Instead, she was sinking deeper into a life of immorality and vice. Around this time, a new Baptist church had opened in Oklahoma City, largely thanks to the efforts of Brenda's husband, Rob. He became a deacon at the church, and Brenda taught Sunday school. From the outside, it seemed like they were a perfect, moral family. Brenda, a devoted wife, taught her children about faith and community. She met James Pavitt, a part-time teacher and friend of Rob, who was drawn to her charm. As their relationship blossomed in 2001, they kept it secret but eventually became open about their feelings. Rob's suspicions of Brenda's infidelity led to a heated argument and separation. James also ended his marriage. While Rob hoped to reconcile, Brenda filed for divorce. A mysterious phone call and car malfunction followed, leading Rob to suspect James and Brenda were behind the attempt on his life. He reported his concerns to the police, raising questions about what drove him to make such a claim. Rob Andrew and his wife Brenda's divorce was already settled, including a custody agreement for their children. However, a large insurance policy taken out by James Pavitt could still financially benefit Brenda upon Rob's death. In fact, just months prior, James had sold Rob an $800,000 life insurance policy, listing Brenda as the sole beneficiary. This raised suspicions about Brenda's involvement in the recent violent attack on Rob. Detectives discovered that Brenda's new lover, James Pavitt, was involved in the insurance scheme and that Rob had tried to remove Brenda from the policy 2 weeks before the incident, but James refused, citing that only Brenda could make changes as the beneficiary. Rob didn't take his former friend's word for it, so he decided to investigate further by speaking with management. What he found out was shocking. Brenda and James had tried to forge the insurance policy by transferring ownership to Brenda, falsifying Rob's signature and backdating the document. However, Rob was assured by Pavitt's superiors that he still owned the policy and that only the policyholder could make changes to the contract. When James found out about this, he was furious, as this discovery was the reason for his termination. In a separate development, an inspection at the neighbor's house, the Gigstad's family, yielded an unexpected result. A fired shell casing from the shotgun in question was found on the bedroom floor, and several .22 caliber bullets were found in the attic. At the time of the crime, the Gigstad couple was not home, and there were no signs of forced entry. Mrs. Gigstad revealed that she had given a spare key of their home to Brenda Andrew. Additional, James's daughter provided another crucial piece of evidence. On the day of the crime, she had lent her car to her father, who promised to have it repaired. However, when James returned the vehicle, Joanna noticed that the repairs had not been made. Moreover, she found a .22 caliber bullet in the car, which she thought was suspicious. When she told her father about the bullet, he instructed her to get rid of it. Further investigation revealed that James had purchased a handgun just a week before the attack. This new information led detectives to plan a questioning of James and Brenda. The funeral of Rob Andrews was held on November 23rd, but it was notable for the absence of Brenda, her children, and James Pavitt. Their failure to attend the ceremony raised many questions among family and friends, and also sparked concern among the police. It soon became apparent that the missing individuals had fled, leaving behind a trail of suspicion and unanswered questions. The police had a breakthrough in the case. They had identified the suspects and received the autopsy results. However, Brenda's account of the attack contradicted the forensic evidence. The police discovered that two different guns were used in the attack, and the injuries sustained by Rob and Brenda differed from the description provided by Brenda. The investigation revealed that the first shot was fired from a shotgun at a distance, but the second shot came from a .22 caliber pistol at close range. The same pistol was used to shoot Brenda's arm. Analysis of the bloodstains on the fabric showed that the shooter was standing near the victim when the second shot was fired. The angle of the blood matched the shooter's position, indicating that Brenda was the one who fired the second shot at Rob. Brenda and James were officially named suspects and a warrant was issued for their arrest. However, they had a substantial lead and had already gone into hiding. The police notified border officials to be on the lookout for but they had vanished. It eventually became clear that James and Brenda had fled to another country, with Mexico being the suspected destination. To capture the fugitives, the authorities froze their bank accounts, assuming that without access to their funds, they would eventually surface. This strategy proved effective, and 3 months later, James reached out to his daughter, Joanna, requesting that she send him money. Unbeknownst to James, Joanna was secretly working with the investigators. Joanna had long suspected her father's involvement in the crime, as he had been secretive and evasive with her. She recalled a previous incident where he had asked her boyfriend to pose as a doctor and call Rob, informing him that his wife was ill. It led them to discover that James and Brenda were secretly staying in Cancun, Mexico. In February 2002, James Pavitt and Brenda Andrew were arrested at the border and turned over to U.S. authorities. They were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a felony. The children were placed in the care of their paternal grandparents. During the investigation, neither James nor Brenda cooperated or pleaded guilty. James was the first to stand trial. The prosecution presented a strong case, highlighting James' background as an Army sniper and his experience with firearms. The court also heard about James' affair with Brenda and his attempts to prevent Rob Andrew from removing Brenda as a beneficiary. The jury considered the testimony of James' daughter and physical evidence found at the scene. James was found guilty and sentenced to death. Brenda's trial followed, but it was more dramatic and revealing than James'. The prosecution focused on Brenda's personality and history of infidelity, calling her former lovers to testify. They portrayed her as someone lacking in faith and integrity. When the prosecutor questioned Brenda about her husband's murder, she claimed to be innocent and asked to be set free, citing her faith. However, the prosecutor presented a different image of Brenda, portraying her as a woman who didn't love her husband, cheated on him, and killed him for selfish reasons. To support his argument, the prosecutor showed the contents of a suitcase Brenda had taken to Mexico, which included lingerie and a book about seduction techniques. He questioned whether a grieving widow would flee her husband's funeral. In contrast, the defense team attempted to depict Brenda as a victim of the events that transpired. The defense attorney pointed out that Brenda was also injured during the attack, but forensic experts concluded that she had shot herself in the arm. The defense then produced a letter allegedly written by James, confessing to the crimes. However, handwriting analysis revealed that the document was actually forged by Brenda Andrew herself. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, and Brenda Andrew was sentenced to death. Despite Brenda's repeated appeals, her conviction has been upheld. The crimes committed by Brenda and James are extremely disturbing. What makes their case even more troubling is that they presented themselves as devout and moral individuals who taught children right from wrong. This hypocrisy raises serious concerns, as people who preach one thing but do not practice it in their own lives can be unpredictable and devoid of empathy. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Wang Nan. Wang Nan was born in 1987 in Guangzhou, China, a major city in former capital. She came from a relatively affluent family, and her parents provided her with the best possible education, fostering her talents and potential. Wang Nan excelled academically, particularly in the sciences. After completing her secondary education, she enrolled in a prestigious university, studying business and finance fundamentals while mastering multiple foreign languages. Upon graduation, she landed a job at a large travel agency, where she established herself as a valuable, responsible, and highly motivated employee. Her career progressed rapidly, and she was soon assigned to Thailand to lead and develop a new branch. Wang Nan was a high-achieving manager at a travel agency, but she left to pursue her own business venture. She opened a Chinese restaurant in Bangkok, which quickly grew into a popular chain under her leadership. As a successful entrepreneur, Wang effectively managed and expanded her business. However, her professional success came at the cost of her personal life. Her last romantic relationship was during her university days, and once she started working, she had no time for dating due to her demanding schedule. Wang, nearing her 30th birthday, wasn't worried about her solitary life, consumed by her business. To improve her Thai skills, she enrolled in courses at a training center. There, she met Yu, who caught her attention by staring before approaching her in Thai. They briefly conversed, and Yu asked why she was studying Thai. Wang replied it was essential for her business growth. Yu proposed that they exchange business cards so they could arrange to meet again. As a courtesy, Wang gave him her card, and he gave her his in return. According to his card, Yu was involved in the export-import trade in Bangkok, but this information didn't make a significant impression on Wang, who simply put the card in her purse and forgot about it. In contrast, Yu seemed truly interested and followed up by calling Wang the very next day. However, she was too preoccupied with work at that time and politely turned down his invitation to meet for coffee. A few days later, the situation recurred. Wang declined another date, citing her busy schedule and preparations for a business conference where she aimed to expand her professional network. However, Yu appeared at the event, bearing a lavish bouquet of flowers. He waited for Wang to become available, then approached her and asked her out again. Wang was won over by Yu's persistence, as no one had ever pursued her so fervently. She agreed to dinner, marking the beginning of an unexpected romance. You fell deeply in love with Juan, showering her with attention, surprises, and gifts. He sent flowers and sweet notes every morning and called her twice a day. Juan's feelings were mixed, irritated by his intensity but flattered by his efforts. She found herself in a romantic relationship again, swept up by his wooing. Juan Man was thrilled to discover that you shared her passions and hobbies. To win her heart, you made an effort to learn how to cook her favorite meals and surprised her with tickets to thrilling events. Not only was you charming, but he was also very supportive, always willing to lend a hand whenever Wang Nan needed it, whether at work or at home. Wang Man felt like she was on cloud nine, but one thing bothered her. After just a few months of dating, you was already talking about getting married and even suggesting names for their future kids. Wang Man was taken aback by Yu's eagerness, but he justified it by pointing out that they were both in their 30s and it was time to start a family. Wang Man was unsure how to respond, feeling uncertain about Yu's suitability as a life partner. After a heart-to-heart conversation, where Wang Nan expressed her doubts, Yu vowed to prove his love. That night, he sent her a heartfelt letter, reaffirming his commitment to being a devoted husband and father. In the morning, Wang found Yu waiting on her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers. He proclaimed his serious intentions and readiness to marry her immediately. Wang Man joked that the courthouse wouldn't be open for another hour and a half. However, Yu suggested going there right away, and if it was open, they would register their marriage on the spot. Wang agreed, confident that the courthouse would be closed. But to her surprise, they found it open, and the officer was already at his desk, ready to register their marriage registration. It was revealed that Yu had made prior arrangements, requesting a special exception to formalize their marriage early in the morning. The wedding was unusual, with no guests, rings, wedding dress, or photos. Wang couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't real, especially since she hadn't introduced Yu to her mother, with whom she was very close. Before she knew it, she was holding a marriage certificate. Wang and Yu had a troubled family life. Wang regretted her marriage almost immediately after it was registered. Initially, she had hoped that Yu would be a good husband and a reliable partner. However, her hopes were soon dashed as Yu revealed his true nature. He spent most of his time at home playing video games, using his wife's money, and contributing nothing to the household income. When Wang asked him why he didn't work, Yu claimed that his business was experiencing a seasonal downturn and that he could take a break. However, this downturn had been ongoing for an extended period, prompting Wang to investigate her husband's business. She discovered that his supposed export-import business was merely a facade, existing only on paper and business cards. At that moment, Wang realized the gravity of her mistake in not creating a prenuptial agreement. This meant her husband, Yu, had the freedom to spend her earnings as he pleased and could claim her property in the event of a divorce. They had a heart-to-heart conversation, during which Yu broke down in tears, promising to turn his life around and find employment. However, it soon became apparent that he had no intention of looking for a job and was content to rely on his wife's financial support. Yu, a grown man, regularly behaved immaturely, devoting most of his time to playing computer games. On the rare occasions when he helped with household chores or assisted his wife at their restaurant, he would request money from her for personal expenses. Wang eventually reached her limit and informed Yu she wouldn't give him any more money until he secured employment. The next day, following this conversation, Yu vanished, taking their marriage certificate and Wang's identity card with him. It wasn't until the evening, when Wang received a call from her accountant inquiring about a large sum of money transferred from her account, that she realized the item were missing. She was shocked, as she hadn't authorized any transfers, but she immediately suspected Yu. The transferred amount exceeded $500,000, which Yu had moved into his personal account by providing the bank with their marriage certificate, Wang's documents, and a claim that the money was jointly managed. Wang immediately reported the theft to the police, and her husband, Yu, was tracked down a few hours later when he tried to withdraw some of the stolen funds. Yu broke down in tears and begged for his wife's forgiveness, revealing that he had accumulated a large debt due to his gambling addiction and was being threatened. It was also revealed that Yu had a previous run-in with the law, having served an 8-year prison sentence for robbery in China. Wang was both shocked and ashamed, realizing she was not as familiar with her husband as she had thought. Despite this, she viewed gambling as an illness and felt driven to support her husband in overcoming his addiction and resuming a normal life. Wang not only agreed to pay off half of Yu's debt but also offered him a job as a manager at one of her restaurants. Initially, Yu seemed grateful and took his new role seriously, even devising a successful strategy for the restaurant's development. However, his enthusiasm was short-lived, and he soon began spending more time playing computer games and engaging in other leisure activities. During that time, Wang found out she was pregnant and told her husband, Yu. However, he reacted strangely and aggressively, saying he wasn't ready for a child and wanted her to have an abortion. Wang refused, and Yu threatened to divorce her and divide their property through the court. He didn't speak to her for several days but then apologized and changed his behavior. Yu explained that he had said hurtful things in the heat of the moment but was actually happy about the pregnancy. He started showing care and helping out around the house again. 2 months later, Wang was happy because her marriage had improved, and Yu was being attentive and responsible. He was preparing their home for the arrival of the baby and doing his job as a manager. One day, Yu suggested getting life and health insurance for Wang because of her pregnancy, to protect her and the baby in case of unexpected events. Wang agreed and wondered why she hadn't thought of it earlier. They got the insurance the next day, and a couple of weeks later, Yu suggested taking a vacation to relax and unwind. Wang was initially hesitant about taking a trip, but her husband persuaded her by pointing out that they had never had a honeymoon and would soon be too busy with their baby to travel. He also emphasized that they needed a break to clear their minds after a tough period. Eventually, Wang agreed to the trip. Her husband took charge of planning the trip, choosing the destination, booking the hotel, and organizing activities to ensure a balance of excitement, education, and relaxation, given Wang's pregnancy. Wang was happy to let him handle everything and was pleased to see how enthusiastic he was about their vacation. On June 7th, they arrived at the park and spent the day exploring, taking in the beautiful views and sights. As it was a summer Friday evening, the park was crowded with visitors. As the evening wore on, Wang noticed that her husband was becoming increasingly agitated and nervous. When she asked if everything was okay, he replied that the large crowds of tourists were ruining their chances of a peaceful and private sunset viewing. Wang Nan eventually agreed that it would be romantic to watch the sunset, as the park would become less crowded as the sun dipped below the horizon. Yu climbed over the fence of the observation deck and called out to his wife, telling her about the breathtaking view. However, Wang refused to join him, citing the darkness and potential danger. Yu became angry but returned to her after a few minutes. He suggested that they should come back to the park to watch the sunrise instead. Since they returned to their hotel well past midnight, they decided to sleep in on Saturday and head back to the reserve early on Sunday morning. On Sunday, June 9th, a couple, Yu and Wang, visited the national park to watch the sunrise. They woke up at 3 a.m. and arrived at the park while it was still dark, finding the area mostly deserted. From an observation deck, they admired the dawn. Afterwards, Yu went down to a cliff and encouraged Wang to join him to see the rock paintings. Wang was hesitant, but Yu assured her it was safe and promised to help her down and then climb back up. She trusted him and cautiously approached the cliff. The view was breathtaking. Yu hugged Wang and asked if she had any regrets in life. She replied confidently that she didn't. Yu then ran his hand through her hair, kissed her cheek, and leaned in to whisper, "Die." He loosened his grip and pushed Wang down the cliff. He checked to ensure no one was watching, looked down but couldn't see where she had fallen. There was only silence, indicating no one had seen or heard anything. You walked calmly towards the park exit, intending to report the incident only after Wang was surely dead. However, a few hikers who had wandered off the trail spotted Wang's body on the rocks and quickly called for rescue. As you left the reserve, several emergency vehicles with flashing lights and sirens sped past him. Realizing what was happening, he returned to the scene where his wife had fallen. Upon his return, you put on a dramatic display of grief, crying and screaming for help. Convinced that Wang was already dead, he thought no one would uncover the truth. But, as it turned out, Wang's fall was cushioned by tree branches, bushes, and rocks, which slowed her descent and saved her life, as well as the life of her unborn child. Though she suffered serious injuries, Wang suddenly opened her eyes and attempted to speak. Her husband's initial horror was evident to everyone present, but he quickly regained composure, leaned in close to Wang, and whispered in Chinese that she should remain silent if she wanted to live. Wang suffered severe injuries, including head trauma, multiple fractures, internal organ damage, and significant blood loss. Her spine was also badly damaged, leading doctors to worry that she might never walk again. She spent several days in a coma, during which her husband, Yu, stayed by her side. However, whenever he was alone with her, he thought about how to end her life without arousing suspicion. When Wang regained consciousness, Yu was extremely nervous, fearing she would reveal the truth to the police. He refused to leave her alone, even for a moment. Whenever he had the opportunity, he threatened her, claiming he had nothing to lose. Initially, Wang corroborated Yu's account, attributing her fall to dizziness. However, when you briefly left her side, Wang asked a nurse to call the police and prevent you from re-entering the room. It was then that she revealed the shocking truth, alleging that her husband had attempted to kill her. You burst into the room, claiming his wife was insane due to a head injury and that he would never hurt her or the baby. However, his words lacked conviction, and he was taken into custody at the hospital that same day. He faced multiple charges, including attempted murder and intimidation, for trying to silence his wife. Initially, Wang had hoped to save her pregnancy, as the baby had survived the fall. However, the doctors advised an abortion due to the strong painkillers, multiple surgeries under general anesthesia, and the need for antibiotics. They prioritized Wang's life, as the fetus would likely not survive the effects of the medication. This news was devastating for Wang, but she followed the doctor's advice. You consistently denied his guilt and maintained that the event was an accident. In prison, he remained calm and hired skilled lawyers, confident that he could avoid or minimize punishment. Investigators and the prosecutor were convinced that he committed the crime out of self-interest, seeking a substantial insurance payout and his wife's significant fortune of nearly $2.5 million. However, during one interrogation, Yu stunned everyone by revealing another motive for his heinous act. He harbored resentment towards his wife, Wang, for agreeing to only pay off half of his debt, which he accumulated due to his gambling addiction. Yu believed that if his wife truly loved him, she would have covered all of his debts, given her financial means. He concluded that Wang did not love him and felt justified in punishing her. In March 2021, Yu was convicted and received a life sentence. However, Song and his lawyers submitted multiple appeals. 6 months later, the Thai court reduced the sentence to 33 years in prison, showing unusual leniency. Wang and her loved ones were shocked, arguing that such a light sentence would set a bad precedent and potentially encourage others to commit similar horrific crimes. In Yu's case, his relatives claimed that he was a wealthy businessman and that Wang married him for selfish reasons. However, this claim cannot be proven as Yu has nothing but huge debts. As for Wang, Despite the doctor's predictions, she was able to recover after undergoing a series of complicated surgeries and a long rehabilitation process. She learned to walk again and spent most of her earnings on her recovery. In 2023, Wong returned to work and was able to revive her once successful business. She also founded an organization dedicated to helping women who are victims of domestic violence and runs her own blog, where she shares her experiences and warns women against making the same mistakes she did.